So, you ever watch a big historical movie and just think to yourself, wait a minute, did it really happen that way? Well, Ridley Scott's new movie Napoleon has definitely kicked up that debate again. And honestly, it gets at a much bigger question about how we even understand the past at all. All right, let's get into it.
See, the problem is, the Napoleon in the movie clashes, like big time, with the guy most of us learned about in history class. And this contradiction, it's not just some little movie detail. It's actually a perfect way to see a fundamental problem in how we tell stories about history.
On one side, you've got the legend, right? Napoleon, the military genius, the super charismatic leader, the guy who modernized France and basically willed himself into power. But then, the movie gives us, well, a totally different guy. A kind of pathetic, socially awkward character who was just a pawn for the rich folks, and then got tossed aside when he wasn't useful anymore.
And that is the million-dollar question, isn't it? When you're staring at two versions of the same person that are complete polar opposites, how in the world do you figure out which one is real?
But look, this isn't just about Napoleon. This kind of uncertainty is baked into the very study of the past. We're almost always working with puzzle pieces that are missing, biased, or just plain contradictory.
Now, this challenge has a very formal, very academic-sounding name, but trust me, the idea behind it is actually pretty simple. It's called epistemological opaqueness, and it's the main reason history can feel so blurry.
All it really means is that the past is hard to see clearly. I mean, think about it. Documents get lost or destroyed, the winners always write the official story, propaganda messes everything up, and you can interpret physical evidence in a dozen different ways. It's like we're always trying to look back through a really foggy window.
And this isn't just some dusty academic puzzle. The consequences of getting a story wrong or having these wildly competing stories can shape how we see an entire culture. Let me show you a much more dramatic example.
Let's talk about the Mexica civilization, who you probably know as the Aztecs. So, after the Spanish conquest, most of their documents were just burnt, gone. This left us with two totally extreme stories. One paints this picture of an amazing civilization with incredible artists and engineers. The other, a barbaric society of cannibals who had to be civilized. The truth is almost certainly somewhere in between, but wow, that is a massive gap.
Okay, so if history is so full of holes, what are we supposed to do? Well, the author of our source material, Oliver López-Corona, thinks we should look for an answer in a surprisingly modern place.
And this is where things get really interesting. He argues that trying to piece together the past looks a whole lot like trying to make big decisions about a future you can't predict.
And for that, there's actually a framework. It's called robust decision-making, or RDM. The idea isn't to predict the one correct future. Instead, RDM helps you find strategies that will work out pretty well across a whole bunch of different possible futures. It's about being resilient, not just being right.
Which leads to this fascinating idea. What if we could take this framework that's designed to look forward and just turn it around? What if we used it to look backward and make sense of our messy, contradictory past?
This gives us a new framework we can call robust history making, or RHM. It boils down to 4 key steps. First, instead of locking onto one story, you explore all the different plausible narratives. Then, you stress test each one against the hard evidence. You see what holds up. Third, you have to be adaptive. You let your understanding change when new facts come along. And finally, and this is a big one, you just have to acknowledge that no single story is ever going to be perfect.
So, that all sounds great in theory, but what does it actually look like in practice? How would a historian really use this?
Let's circle back to our Mexica example and that really controversial topic of human sacrifice. Let's see how this RHM framework might help bring a little bit of clarity.
Using RHM, a historian wouldn't just pick one version. They'd lay out all the plausible scenarios. So you'd have scenario A. It didn't happen like the stories say. The remains we found are actually from ritual burials. Then scenario B. Okay, it happened, but we don't know how often or on what scale. And then there's scenario C. It was exactly the massive apocalypto-style spectacle the Spanish accounts described.
Now, here's a really crucial point. This is not a license to just believe whatever you want. Any plausible scenario has to line up with the hardcore facts, the stuff we can't deny, like the archaeological evidence, the existence of the city itself, their calendar. It's all about exploring the possibilities within the boundaries of what we actually know for sure.
You see, when you start applying a framework like this, it forces you to step back and ask a much bigger question. What is history, anyway?
Is it really about finding one single definitive story? Or is it maybe something else?
The real goal of robust history making is to filter everything down and find what's left. What are the parts of the story that are so solid they stay true no matter which scenario you're looking at? That's the real power here. It helps us separate the durable, rock-solid facts from the more fragile interpretations.
So the next time you run into a historical story with conflicting accounts, whether it's about Napoleon or an ancient civilization or even something that happened last week, you've got a new lens to look through. Instead of asking which story is the right one, maybe a better question is, what parts of this story are true no matter which version you tell? Because that might be the closest any of us can ever get to the truth.